Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Last time we stopped by verse number 89 of Surat Al Anbyaa, which is chapter number 20 to 21 of the Quran. Today, inshallah, we'll be covering two more verses to do with Prophet Zakariyya. I recite the verses first and offer some rough translation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وزكريا إذ نادى ربه رب لا تذرني فردا وأنت خير الوارثين فاستجبنا له ووهبنا له يحيى وأصلحنا له زوجا إنهم كانوا يسارعون في الخيرات ويدعوننا رغبا ورهبا وكانوا لنا خاشعين والتي أحصنت فرجها فنفخنا فيها من روحنا وجعلناها وابنها آية للعالمين إن هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة وأنا ربكم فاعبدون وتقطعوا أمرهم بينهم كل إلينا راجعون. So we begin with Zakariyya alayhi salam. So the verse says, and remember Zakariyya when he cried out to his Lord, Rabbi la tadharni fardan, O my Lord, don't leave me alone. وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ, and you are the best of all heirs. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ, so we answered his call. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ يَحْيَى, we granted him John. وَأَصْلَحْنَا لَهُ زَوْجَهُ, and we cured or reformed his wife for him. إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ, this entire family, they used to vie in virtue. وَيَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا, and they would come back to us at times of ease and at times of difficulties. وَكَانُوا لَنَا خَاشِعِينَ, and they would humble themselves before us. To begin probably with a more linguistic point, you see this, the verse number 90, it says, فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ وَهَبْنَا لَهُ يَحْيَى, so we granted him John. Then, وَأَصْلَحْنَا لَهُ زَوْجَهُ, the Quran uses this term, أَصْلَحْنَا لَهُ زَوْجَهُ. It could be, by this time, Zakariyya was 100 years old. His wife is very advanced in age, in her 90s. Scholars disagree on what it means when the Quran says we reformed. Does it say we reformed? I mean, the verb aslaha, it could mean first of all, at this age she is very advanced in age, so the hope that she gets pregnant is really almost impossible. So it could be that we cured. So aslaha is to cure, right? But it also means to reform. Actually, the original meaning is to reform. The original meaning of islah is to reform. So we reformed his wife for him. It is more likely to be reform we reformed his wife, maybe. I mean, it's highly unlikely that she was like an ill-mannered person, very unlikely. But aslaha could mean she became his companion in terms of reform, known in the Bible as Elizabeth. وأصلحنا له زوجه. What makes me say that it could possibly mean more reform is that the Quran says first we gave him Yahya and then we fixed his wife, if you wish, we reformed his wife. If it's to do with a medical cure, if you wish, she became more, she can give birth by now, can get pregnant by now, the Quran would have mentioned that first and then would say, and because we cured her, now she can give birth. And then, so we granted him Yahya after that. But actually the Quran reverses this. The Quran mentioned Yahya first. It says, وَهَبْنَا لَهُ Yahya. So granted him Yahya. And then we reformed his wife, if you wish, for him. But you have other linguists who would say, the Quran did not say ثُمَّ أَصْلَحْنَا لَهُ. ثُمَّ in Arabic means then. In English means then. The Quran is not saying then. The Quran is not using this preposition, thumma. It is using the preposition wow. Wow means and, basically. So we granted him Yahya and we reformed his wife. Which does not mean that one of these events happened after the other. Could mean they all happened together, or in this sort of chronology is not intended here because of the usage of this preposition wow. Wow does not entail time. Thumma entails time. Thumma means what is mentioned after thumma happened after the first one, which is not the case with the wow. So that's why there is this agreement on what aslaha literally means, because primarily how the letters or the prepositions that are used in this verse. So just to give a bit of background, Zakariyya alayhi salam, very advanced in age. I wish we could read some of the Bible today, but if you fancy reading something to do with the birth of John in the Bible, it's in the Gospel of Luke. In the first chapter, you have there is an entire narration on the birth of John and Elizabeth, that is John's mother, what the discussion was, what Zakariyya was expecting, blah blah blah. But the Quran again gives us more the lessons that we should be after. So very advanced in age, both of them. Zakariyya is almost 100 years old. His wife Elizabeth in her 90s. So the hope in having a child, again the dominant understanding is Zakariyya was asking for a child. But the Quran never said Zakariyya was asking for a child, by the way. Zakariyya was asking for an heir. Someone that succeeds him in his moral responsibility as a religious leader. He sees no one really suitable for this position. So I'm asking Allah, I'm really worried about my community. I'm looking for someone to lead this. Otherwise, if I die, I don't know who is to look after this community. Throughout the Quran, the Quran never said explicitly that Zakariyya was asking for a child. That's why he was so surprised when Allah told him there is a child, but it's come from you. Surah Maryam talks about this in more details. It says, يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوب. I'm asking for a successor that will inherit from me and inherit from the family of Jacob, Yaqub. وَاجْعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا. And Allah said to Ya Zakariyya, إِنَّا نُبَشِّرُكَ بِغُلَامٍ. And then he says, قال رب أن يكون لي غلام. Allah said to him, we're giving you good news of having a child yourself. He said, أن يكون لي غلام. How could I have a child when I'm really advanced in age? وكانت امرأتي عاقرا. My wife is a barren woman. She never gave birth. It's not that she's not just advanced in age, she never gave birth. So وقد بلغت من الكبر عتيا, and I am really too old. قال كذلك قال. So he himself is so surprised. He knows that Allah would answer his prayer, but his prayer was not that I'm really looking for a child. That's what is commonly understood as he was asking for a child. Then if you believe so, he was asking for a child, the question would be, why was he surprised after that? You asked for it, Allah gave it to you, right? But this is not the case. Most likely, he was asking for an heir. He actually never expected it would come from him. He's asking Allah to give him someone who would lead the community after him. Allah says, the cherry on the cake, that you will have it come from you. That's why he was so surprised. Actually, in the Bible, I wish I had the Bible with me today. The Bible says, actually the Quran as well says, قال رب اجعل لي آية. I want a sign that this is going to happen. Like it's really, I can't believe this. قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس ثلاث ليال سويا. So the sign is that you won't be able to speak to the people for 3 days and 3 nights. Then he would speak with sign language using his own hands for 3 days. So that's not the response of someone who asked for a specific, a child or something. That was not his request. His request was mainly, Wallahu alam, asking for an heir, basically. Ibrahim, please shut the door. Yeah. So he was asking for an heir. So Allah, in these 2 verses, Allah is telling us some of the qualities of these people. إنهم كانوا يسارعون في الخيرات. They would vie in virtue. They would compete with each other in good stuff. ويدعوننا رغبا ورهبا. They would come back to us at times of ease and at times of difficulties. وكانوا لنا خاشعين. And it means they were consistent in their relationship with Allah, which is something that we hugely and deeply lack, being consistent in relationship with Allah. وكانوا لنا خاشعين. They would humble themselves before us. What do I take as the major, personally, as the major thing from these 2 verses, and then inshallah we open the floor for your questions or comments. To me, when I read Zakariyya alayhi salam throughout the Quran, what comes to my mind is the question of, desire or aspiration, perhaps. Zakariyya is aspiring for something or desiring something. And whenever we hear the word desire, especially in today's world, it's mostly negative. It's always linked with lowly desires. He, at essence, Zakariyya is desiring something, no matter what it is, right? Isn't he? To give you an input or an insight into how the Quran views the concept of desire, raghba or irada or shahwa, if you wish, we need to understand the context as well, or the different schools that look at the question of desire. We have, in today's understanding of desire, we have 2 primary ways of understanding desire. The first one is often called the Stoic approach. The Stoic approach is linked with an old Greek school, philosophical school, called the School of Stoicism. I'm sure you know what the word Stoic, in today's understanding, means. Do you know what it means? This is a Stoic approach. This is a Stoic position. What is it? Strong.
Like honourable.
Honourable. Strong.
Like
Resisting. Absolutely. This Stoic school, if you write on Google or something, I'm an old man, you know, if you write in ChatGPT or something, Stoicism, it will come up quite quickly, quite easy. Stoicism is based literally on this sense of resistance. Resisting what? Resisting desire. And this school basically discourages desire. This is for you as a human being, in order to avoid despair, all you need is to resist and discourage your desire. So you become indifferent to things. I'm not wanting anything. I don't want anything. And therefore what happens, I won't get angry if I miss something, if I lose something. I am internally at peace with myself. I'm not looking for any more stuff extrinsically outside of me. So this approach is so strong from this perspective, makes you indifferent to the happenings around you, because you've developed this sense of approach towards desire. I resist desire. I'm internally at peace. I don't care what happens. Often seen, yes, as a very honorable take in life. It often reflects strength, someone who's very strong, but it is strength because of resistance. I have resisted that. I actually suppressed Allah. The way Allah designed the human being, we have a desire, like embedded into us. You can't escape that. It does exist. So what they do is they suppress the desire. You suppress the desire. Perhaps the word resist feels a little bit too weak now for this position. I think when you resist something, it means you haven't killed it yet. When you kill something, when you suppress something until it dies, so that the whole aim is for you to kill this desire. So if I am to summarize the Stoic approach, it's suppression, where you suppress the desire. Very ancient, very old school in philosophy. In today's world, there is another school. Meritocracy. Meritocratic approach. That meritocratic approach, what does it do? It actually does the opposite. If the Stoic approach suppresses the desire, the meritocratic approach releases the desire. Maybe it's not too hard to find this in today's life, where the desire takes the lead. You know, when you come to study philosophy, one of the most dominant ways of dividing the the medieval times from the modern times, from the contemporary times, they would say medieval times is the age of faith. Modern times is the age of reason. Contemporary times is the age of feeling. You feel something, you do it. So you don't really resist your desire, you don't really suppress your desire, you somehow release. Right? And what happens here is simply the desire is definitely encouraged. Right? Associated with that comes the concept of ambition. Remember, here there is no ambition. You know, I'm not ambitious of anything, because I'm internally at peace. I have nothing to desire, nothing to aspire for. Halas.
Indifference.
Indifference, exactly. The opposite of this, I've become so ambitious. Ambition here is actually moral, not just encouraged, actually moralized. If I say to you, you are very ambitious, how do you feel? Do you feel good or bad about it? You feel good, like it's a good thing. So now desire has become, has turned into actually a moral thing. Morally speaking, if you tell someone that you are ambitious, they take it as a very positive thing. So desire has has made ambition, which is very linked to it, a moral virtue. But also another thing associated with it, what follows from ambition is success. Success has become an evidence of someone's worth. If you're someone successful in life, success literally goes hand in hand with your worth in this life. That's all. This comes and follows from how you view desire. So here we have a school like Stoicism that suppresses desire. A school like of course, when we say it comes from the word merit. That's why it's called meritocratic. So it comes from the word merit. We have a school here that does the opposite. It simply encourages desire, releases it, moralizes ambition, and views success as an evidence of one's own worth. The problem with these, with this one, it has definitely a strong side to it and a positive side to it. That is, you become very strong, but also indifferent. Also, the word indifferent is negative enough anyway. Like, if I ask a Muslim, does this fulfill your function and your job as a human being on earth? Did Allah create me and placed me on earth to be indifferent? Of course not. One of the key words the Quran says, one of the key functions, one of the key objectives of the human being is the word istamarakum. He wanted you to civilize earth. He created you and he wanted you to civilize this earth. Okay, yeah, man? Can a stoic person civilize? They see no desire, they see no ambition, no civilization. Therefore goes against one of the key Quranic objectives. Because Allah does not want us to be indifferent. So while it has a strong side to it, a positive side to it, that is, you become quite strong, which is something we can take from the Stoics. Absolutely. Actually, we need it today. But we also need to be cautious of the negative side of it, because it turns into indifference. It kills the human aspiration. Allah created us with minds, with souls, with this, with that, not to become indifferent. So you somehow not using and not utilizing the potentials that Allah has created you with, just because of one single thing you were so negative of, that is the desire. This one. So the primary problem with this one is it kills ambition, and it makes you indifferent to things. The other school has a major problem, that is the problem of entitlement. You become so ambitious. If you say, for example, I earn this, I deserve that. It makes the whole world a world of, forensic competition. Like, people are competing aimlessly. Everyone wants what is within your hands. No, there is nothing that is really honorable about this sort of aimless competition, if you wish. And mainly because it's based on this sort of merit, like I earned this, I deserve that. But the rest of it, like as in, does Allah want us to be ambitious? Yes. Allah wants us to be aspirational. Yes. And another problem with this one, apart from being this sort of entitlement, if I do this, if I did this, I deserve that. And if I don't, what happens? I become depressed, I get depressed, I get distressed, everything. Because I do not get what I'm worthy of. We see this often today. Another problem with it is it centralizes the human being. I am the one who does, I am the one who acts, and I'm the one who is worthy of this, who is worthy of that. There is nothing to stop me, basically. There is no higher vision, higher objective or so. The Quran literally comes in the middle of this. Inshallah, my next book, I talked about it a couple of times before. It's called Reading the Quran with Kant, the Excluded Middle. How often the Western culture, I mean, to be honest, I have to be more qualified language here. Many philosophers would, radicalize these positions, either this or that. The Quran doesn't do this. As an approach, the Quran, often finds intermediaries positions, because it recognizes the complexity of the human experience on earth, and therefore you can't really reduce the human enterprise into either this or that. These either or patterns are not really. If you prioritize this, you compromise that. If you compromise this, you prioritize. I mean, you really have to be really careful with this. Then the Quran introduces this sense of balance. One of the Quranic state, the Quranic words for this, al-mizan. What is al-mizan? Scale. How does the scale look like? The ancient, traditional scale. I forgot. But I mean, you understand, inshallah.
Yeah.
Right? You really have to keep it in the middle. You want to make sure nothing really surpasses the other for it to be scaled. That's what the Quran aims to do. أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. Don't transgress this scale upon which we've designed this whole world. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. The straight path is the middle. That's what the Quran aims to achieve. The Quran comes to say, I don't suppress the desire. I don't release it unconditionally. I rather discipline the desire. So desire is suppressed here, released here, disciplined in the Quranic ethics, in the Quranic ethical system. How does the Quran do that? By designing this sort of mediary position. It's asking us to be ambitious and aspirational. It says actually you're here to civilize Earth, and you have a positive position, a positive function to do, a positive job to do. You're not here to be just indifferent, but in the very same time, you're not meant to really be meritocratic, thinking that you are worthy of, I deserve this, I deserve that, and ending with centralizing the human being, centralizing the human self, the ego, as opposed to centralizing Allah. How does the Quran do this? It's literally. So if the Quran is telling me, I don't really condemn your aspirations, what does it do then? It always attaches these aspirations to higher objectives. So it says, as long as you can attach the desires that you have and reform them and you discipline them into things that serve other higher objectives, you are literally functioning, actualizing the function of istimar, civilization. I'm not killing your desire. I'm not asking you to suppress your desire, but I'm not asking you to divinize your desire either. But I'm asking you to attach it to higher purposes. This higher purpose is what Zakariyya is telling us here. I'm not desiring this kid for myself. I am worried about the future of my community. I won't, I mean, be it, my understanding of the Quran, I don't think Zakaria was asking for a son. He was asking for a successor. I mean, for him, it was very remote. He was asking for a kid, right? Especially, I mean, if he was to ask for a kid, he would have asked much earlier. Like, if this is the case, he would have asked when he was maybe 50, in his 50s or something. But what made him wait all this time and then ask for a kid now, right? So he will have a desire, but this desire is deeply attached to a higher purpose. This higher purpose is I can't leave this community leaderless, morally, right? That's what Zakaria alayhi salam is. Because this again, this passage, Zakariya's story as a whole, often gets misquoted. You have a lot of Muslims who would say, I'll ask Allah for what is even impossible. Something that I really believe in, I'm really attached to. I'll ask for it no matter what. Allah has responded to Zakariya's call. But Zakariya was not asking for a personal, like something personal or something. He was asking for, because he's a community leader, right? So if we understand the context of all this, you put the Quranic ethics in the appropriate place, right? So the point is not, to aimlessly. Actually, there is a hadith that says, you are dishonoring Allah by asking something that it is impossible, because this is not how it works. This is not how Allah has designed this world according to plans. I'm not saying miracles don't happen; they do happen, but there are also universal laws that are established in this world. That leads me to my second point. So, is that clear? So, what time is it?
1:32.
1:30. Okay, I'll be quick, inshallah. My second point is to do with the idea of mentorship. What does the word mentor mean?
Someone higher up who's mentoring you.
Perfect. What does mentor mean? Guide.
Yeah.
Perfect. What else?
Maybe teaching.
Teaching.
Setting an example.
Setting an example. Brilliant.
Yeah.
But also disciplining. For you to discipline your desire, you need to have a discipliner, and that's the function of the mentor. Mentor, some people say. Zakariya alayhi salam was definitely in this position, and he can't leave his community without a mentor. He's looking for a mentor. Mentorship is something that we've lost in today's world, unfortunately. Last week we had a discussion on the question of passion, right? We said one of the key functions of education was to get you to discover what your passions are, to develop these desires, to develop these passions through education. Does education get us to develop these passions today? Up to a certain degree, but not so successfully. One of the other key functions of education was simply, educators were meant to be mentors in the first place. If you go to university today, how do you view your lecturers? Do you view them as mentors, or rather as instructors? Someone who instructs you in a specific subject, right? At essence, someone who is passing information to you in a specific field. Mentorship is not about passing information only, it's about formation. Forming your character. Forming your character. And as that mentor is forming your character, what happens is you get to discover your passion. You get to develop a passion that goes in line with your potentials. So education had much to do with formation, not just information. How do I form the next generation, basically? Otherwise, we have actually the rule is, the norm is, you have graduates who have no idea what the objectives in life are. What am I here to do? What do I do with this degree that I have? I haven't even discovered myself. I haven't even come to know what my real passions are. Right? Because I didn't have mentors. I had instructors. And these instructors themselves, for various reasons, maybe because you didn't get to spend much time with them, they themselves, many lecturers are employed on fixed term contracts. They are here for 1 or 2 years, and that's it. This mentorship takes years and years. So education, I was reading one of the works in Maliki fiqh, and one of the Maliki jurists was asked, we have the concept of waqf. Waqf is endowment, basically. Someone who says, I'm donating this £1 million to fund this school. Right? So the question was posed to one of the jurists, one of the scholars of the day. We have in our waqf, in our school that is funded by this waqf, by this endowment, we have a student who has been here for 12 years. But it hasn't really developed. We can't see any real development with his mindset, with exams, blah, blah, blah. When are we allowed to dismiss them of the school? When can we stop the funding? This is, Muslims were the ones who, I don't know, as far as I know, Muslims were the ones who introduced this concept of waqf, endowment. When can we religiously be allowed to stop funding this guy? He's been here for 12 years. As far as I remember, the answer was, wait for 4 more years. If Allah does not open a window for him into knowledge and understanding, then you can dismiss them. But by now, not yet. You never know when Allah opens the doors for someone. Maybe in the 13th year, 14th, 15th, but 16th, that was his discernment. Right? The point I'm trying to highlight is, formation takes time. It doesn't happen within 3 or 4 years. It does take time. Do we view education in this way? No, education has become reduced. Just I am after the certificate. I'm after the job. That's it. So education has lost much of its meaning, and therefore we need to resuscitate or revive this concept. Mentorship. Real lecturers, real teachers are here not just to inform you a specific piece of information, but rather to form your character, to fashion your character, to mold your character. That's the function of a mentor. As I was looking at this passage, I remembered how Al-Ghazali talked about this in his encyclopedia, Ihya Ulumuddin. He talks about, as we said, part of this formation system. What is this formation about? This formation is about, the Quran speaks essentially of 16 human flaws. We all have them. But the thing about the Quran, it says you have potential to get rid of these potential flaws, to get rid of these flaws and become closer to the angels, if you like, in terms of being a better human being. How do I get rid of my sense of stinginess? How do I get rid of I can talk about this for ages, ungrateful, ingratitude, blah, blah, blah. The Quran identifies at least 16 of those flaws, right? You may summarize the function of this formation is that it's good to me to know these flaws and of vices and to replace them with virtues. The opposite of stinginess is to become
Goodness.
generous. Yes, absolutely. If you, maybe we have another class on that concept. What these 16 flows are, but the journey is like this. You move from a negative thing to a positive thing. Education is like this. Formation is like this. Getting to discover what these are. What is the? It's not just. These are not just theoretical. Some people would have a dominant quality of these. Someone who's defining character. His defining character trait is stinginess. Very dominant in him. So they need to work more on this one. Other people are very coward, right? They need to work more on how to become courageous. Blah blah blah. What does it take then? How do I know? Al-Ghazali says, I probably read very quickly and summarize. It says بيان الطريق الذي به يعرف الإنسان عيوب نفسه. It says in this passage, in this page, I'll provide you with a roadmap as to how you get to know your flaws, so that you move from these vices to the virtues. It says اعلم أن الله عز وجل إذا أراد بعبده خيرا بصره بعيوب نفسه. Know that when Allah, means well for someone, they would get you to know what your flaws are. So the lines are quite small. Last week, when I was reading the biblical passage, there was this word, worm, right? And the line was too small that I read it as worm. It never made sense to me, like in the text itself, what does worm? But I have to make sure I get it as close enough. He says, فَمَنْ كَانَتْ بَصِيرَتُهُ نَافِذَةٌ لَمْ تَخْفَ عَلَيْهِ عُيُوبُهُ. So the one who has really clear insight, they won't fail to see their own flaws. فإذا عرف العيوب أمكنه العلاج. If they get to know what their flaws are, they would get to diagnose and prescribe things for themselves. ولكن أكثر الخلق جاهلون بعيوب أنفسهم. But the vast majority of people are ignorant of their own flaws. يرى أحدهم القذى في عين أخيه ولا يرى الجذع في عين نفسه. They are very capable of seeing, the very tiny thing in the brother's eyes, but they can't see the trunk in the brother in themselves, in their own eyes. Does this make sense? يرى أحدهم القذى في عين أخيه ولا يرى الجذع في عين نفسه. That's a verse from the Bible, by the way. فمن أراد أن يعرف عيوب نفسه فله أربعة طرق. It says if you really aspire to know your own flaws, you have one of four ways. الأول, the first way, the first path. أن يجلس بين يدي شيخ بصير بعيوب النفس. Is to sit with a spiritual guide, a teacher, a master if you wish, who knows the flaws of the self. مطلع على خفايا الآفات. He knows the subtleties of the self. ويحكمه في نفسه ويتبع إشارته في مجاهدته. So he asks this mentor, it's a mentor basically, he asks this mentor to really get him to know what his flaws are and trusts his wisdom, trusts his prescriptions, and follows his path. But then he says, وهذا شأن المريد مع شيخه والتلميذ مع أستاذه فيعرفه أستاذه وشيخه عيوب نفسه ويعرفه طريق علاجه. Like I said, he gets you to know what your flaws are, what the prescriptions are. Then he says, وهذا قد عز في الزمان وجوده. But this is very rare in today's age. Al-Ghazali wrote this in the 5th century. He says we have no mentors anymore. Right? He says very, very rare to have proper and real mentors. This is الثاني, الطريق الثاني أن يطلب. So the first one is to have mentor. The second, he says الثاني أن يطلب صديقا صدوقا بصيرا متدينا فينصبه رقيبا على نفسه ويلاحظ أحواله وأفعاله. He says to try really hard to find real friends, a real friend, a true friend who is religious, and you ask them to really observe your own actions and reactions to things. فما كره من أخلاقه وأفعاله وعيوبه الباطنة والظاهرة ينبهه عليه, and to ask them to really please alert me when I do something that you think this is, problematic or dangerous or ethically wrong or whatever. فهكذا كان يفعل الأكياس والأكابر من أئمة الدين. Says this is how the real scholars and the real leaders and the real mentors of the past used to do. The people of deep religiosity to them. He says كان عمر رضي الله عنه يقول رحم الله امرأ أهدى إلي عيوبي. He says one of Umar's statements, he says, may Allah have mercy upon someone who gifted me my own flaws. Who he gives me as a gift my own flaws. He tells me, by the way, you have this flaw, work on it. Then he says وكان يسأل سلمان عن عيوبه. He actually used to ask his one of Salman al-Farisi was known for his wisdom. So he would come to Salman and ask him, ما الذي بلغك عني مما تكره? Says, tell me something that you really find dubious about my character. فاستعفى. He says, forgive me, I can't talk about this. فألح عليه. But Umar was so keen on knowing what it is. فقال بلغني أنك جمعت بين إدامين على مائدة. Says, I came to know that when you come to eat, you put two condiments on the table, like salt. You put two different types of salts to improve the taste of the food you're eating, right? وأن لك حلتين حلة بالنهار وحلة بالليل, and that you have two different outfits, one for the daytime and one for the night time. قال وهل بلغك غير هذا? He said, any more? Did you have any more flaws that you find with me? He says قال لا. فقال أما هذان فقد كفيتهما. Says, if it's just these two, salted. وكان يسأل حذيفة ويقول له أنت صاحب سر رسول الله في المنافقين. Hudhaifa was one of the companions of the Prophet. He was believed to know, you may agree or disagree with this, but Hudhaifa was believed to have been told by the Prophet of the names of specific hypocrites. I don't fully agree with this, but it is what it is. That's not the point. So he would come to Hudhaifa and ask Hudhaifa, هل ترى علي شيئا من آثار النفاق? He would ask him, am I one of, when the Prophet told you about the names of these hypocrites, did he count me in them? And this is Umar, فهو على جلالة قدره وعلو منصبه هكذا كانت تهمته لنفسه رضي الله عنه. If this is Umar, we know how advanced he is in his deen, and yet he would question himself. The reason I'm critical of this tradition is simply the Quran says to the Prophet, وممن حولكم من أعراب منافقون ومن أهل المدينة مرضوا على النفاق لا تعلمهم نحن نعلمهم. You have no access to these hypocrites, we have access to them. Don't be bothered about them. So I find it hard to believe that one specific companion was given the names of these hypocrites, especially that Allah, Allah told the Prophet, you're protected from them. There is no need to tell someone about them. Anyway, what time is it? 49. Okay, I'll be quick, inshallah. He says, فكل من كان أوفر عقلا وأعلى منصبا كان أقل إعجابا وأعظم اتهاما لنفسه. He says, the more you are advanced in this sort of understanding, the more you be critical of yourself. إلا أن هذا أيضا قد عز فقل في الأصدقاء. He says, this is even, we said the first path, having a good mentor is really rare. This is also rare, having a friend of this nature. فقل في الأصدقاء من يترك المداهنة فيخبر بالعيب. He says it's very rare to find a friend today who doesn't flatter you. أو يترك الحسد, or a friend who is not jealous of you. You have jealous critics as well. فلا يزيد على قدر الواجب فلا تخلو في أصدقائك عن حسود أو صاحب غرض يرى ما ليس بعيب عيبا أو عن مداهن يخفي عنك بعض عيوبك. It says, today in today's friends, this is very rare. You have friends who are jealous, you have friends who are not sincere in the advice, blah blah blah. So it's hard to really rely much on this. He says, ولهذا كان داود الطائي قد اعتزل الناس. He says one of the key masters of the day, a man with the name of Dawood al-Ta'i, lived in the 3rd century of Islam. He withdrew from the people. He said, قيل له, he doesn't mix with people anymore. فقيل له لما لا تخالط الناس? Why don't you mix with people? فقال وماذا أصنع بأقوام يخفون عني عيوبي? He says, what do I do? What benefit would I have from accompanying people that don't really tell me what my flaws are? Then he moves and says, وقد آل الأمر في أمثالنا إلى أن أبغض الخلق إلينا من ينصحنا ويعرفنا عيوبنا. He says, but in today's age, again, Al-Ghazali lived in the 5th century of Islam. He says, in today's age, the person that we hate the most is the person that would tell us what our flaws are. ويكاد هذا أن يكون مفصحا. He says فلو على أنه لو نبهنا منبهون على أن تحت ثوبنا عقربا لتقلدنا منه منة وفرحنا به واشتغلنا بإزالة العقرب وإبعادها وقتلها. He says, but if you think of it this way, if someone comes and says to you, by the way, you have a snake underneath your outfit, how would you react? You'd quickly look into it, to try and get rid of it. He says, why don't we look at it this way? It's literally the same way. These personal flaws are deep inside. Therefore, if someone comes and says to you, by the way, you have a snake, you have a disease inside, you need to work on it. He says, why don't you look at it this way? Why don't you take the more physical things seriously, but you don't take the more metaphysical things inside seriously enough? If someone comes and says you have a snake underneath, you would jump and work on it. But if someone comes and says, by the way, you have a sense of arrogance, work on it. No, actually, I would accuse them of being whatever. Says ثم إنا لا نفرح بمن ينبهنا عليها ولا نشتغل بإزالتها. Says this is not our reaction anymore. بل نشتغل بمقابلة الناصح بمثل مقالته. But we end up actually coming back to the person who was advising us. فنقول له وأنت أيضا تصنع كيت وكيت. Would come back to them and say, don't you do the same? You are also arrogant. What aboutism? Right? وتشغلنا العداوة معه عن الانتفاع بنصحه. So when you take him as an enemy, it's really hard for you to benefit from his, if it's a sincere advice, obviously. He says ويشبه أن يكون ذلك من قساوة القلب التي أثمرتها كثرة الذنوب. This is one of the signs of the hardening of one's heart. This is وأصل كل ذلك ضعف الإيمان. This is the essence of this, the origin of this is having a weak faith. فنسأل الله عز وجل أن يلهمنا رشدنا. He makes a dua. Now, الطريق الثالث. So here we have a mentor, the first one. The second is having a true friend, a true companion. So it's one needs to be really cautious with the people that you accompany, the people that you spend time with. Very dangerous, very, very dangerous. الطريق الثالث, the third path, says أن يستفيد معرفة عيوب نفسه من ألسنة أعدائه. Says to know your flaws from your own enemies. Says فإن عين السخط تبدي المساوية. If someone is critical of you, he is critical of you. So he would be very sharp in his critiques. He would often make sure that, honest people. Otherwise you have people who fabricate things. Yes, that does exist. But also if you have someone, an honest enemy, they would be honest in the critique. Right? Says ولعل انتفاع الإنسان بعدو مشاحن يذكره عيوبه أكثر من انتفاعه بصديق مداهن يثني عليه ويمدحه ويخفي عنه عيوبه. Says this is actually more likely to have than having a true friend who will be happy to offer you his analysis of your flaws. Says this is more logical, as in having an enemy who would tell you your own flaws. Says this exists. We do have it more than having a good friend who will be open and sincere enough. Says إلا أن الطبع مجبول على تكذيب العدو. Says but we are by definition opposed to not accepting things from our enemies. وحمل ما يقوله على الحسد. Very easy for us to say, he's just being jealous. ولكن البصير لا يخلو عن الانتفاع بقول أعدائه. But an insightful person, a person with insight, will always benefit from any advice that comes his way. فإن مساويه لا بد وأن تنتشر على ألسنتهم. So here we have enemies. You learn your own flaws from your enemies. الطريق الرابع أن يخالط الناس. To mix with people. Let's see how he makes this. He says فكل ما رآه مذموما فيما بين الخلق فليطالب نفسه به وينسبها إليه. He says to mix with people. When you mix with people, you will get to know what hurts them and what delights them. You get to know what is good, what is bad. What do they like? What do they don't like? What do the people would always appreciate having an honest person. I mean, should. They would always appreciate having someone who helps them, kind. I mean, you could apply it this way. And I emphasize innocent people, good people. فإن المؤمن مرآة المؤمن, because a believer is a mirror to his fellow believer. فيرى من عيوب غيره عيوب نفسه ويعلم أن الطباع متقاربة في اتباع الهوى. So we are very close to each other in terms of these qualities. So if you see, a couple of people fighting over something, you'll better reflect on yourself. You would say, if I'm in this position, I would probably be also doing a horrible job. I'd rather work on this. But we actually do the opposite. If you see someone lying, you say, if I was in his position, I would never lie. But if you were, that's the question. فما يتصف به واحد من الأقران لا ينفك عنه القرن الآخر عن أصله أو عن أعظم منه أو عن شيء منه. Says, you need to really benefit from this because it's very close, very relative. فليتفقد نفسه ويطهرها من كل ما يذمه من غيره وناهيك بهذا تأديبا. فلو ترك الناس كلهم ما يكرهونه من غيرهم لاستغنوا عن المؤدب. Says if people really mixed with other people and they would really benefit from this engagement. If I know this, people don't like this. They hate this. But by the way, these. Okay, I'll say more on this. Says if you mix with people, you would come to know these flows. You would just, if you take yourself seriously, and you wouldn't, you'd keep away from these flows. You wouldn't even need a mentor. قيل لعيسى عليه السلام من أدبك. He says Jesus was asked, who mentored you? قال ما أدبني أحد. I was not mentored by anyone. رأيت جهل الجاهل شينا فاجتنبته. I've just seen people, how they act and how they interact with each other, and I hated what they hate, so I don't do it. وهذا كله حيل وهذا كله حيل من فقد شيخا عارفا ذكيا بصيرا بعيوب النفس. Says all these are mediocre ways of handling the flaws of the self. I mean the second, third, and fourth paths. It says these three paths, the second, third, and fourth, are the paths you're really trying to attend to the fact that you don't have a mentor. Because all these three paths, the second, having a true friend, the third, having an enemy, the fourth, mixing with people, every single one of these have flaws to it. But it's at least better than nothing. Right? He says these are mediocre solutions to this problem. وهذا كله حيل من فقد شيخا عارفا ذكيا بصيرا بعيوب النفس مشفقا ناصحا في الدين فارغا من تهذيب نفسه مشتغلا بتهذيب عباد الله تعالى ناصحا لهم. Says this is the path, these three paths are the mediocre path for someone who doesn't have a mentor, someone who doesn't have a sheikh, who is full of insight as to what those flaws are, how to fix them, blah blah blah, who is done reforming himself, and now he is in a position to reform other people. That's another thing. That's what makes the sheikh quite distinct. The sheikh is already someone who worked on himself for years and years. He's in a good position to work on others. While with these other paths, this is not the case. Your own friend, how can you guarantee that his piece of advice is a good one? Right? How can you guarantee that his intention is sincere, even if the piece of advice itself is correct? Right? With the third path, the one of enemies, I mean, the fact that they are enemies is in of itself very questionable, let alone mixing with you. He says these are very mediocre ways that try to make up for having a sheikh, having a mentor. He says فَمَنْ وَجَدَ ذَلِكَ, whoever finds a mentor, فَقَدْ وَجَدَ الطَّبِيب, he found a true physician, who found a true doctor. فَلْيُلَازِمْهُ, let him stick to that sheikh, let him stick to that mentor. فَهُوَ الَّذِي يُخَلِّصُهُ مِنْ مَرَضِهِ, he is the one to really help him get rid of these diseases, these flaws. وَيُنْجِيهِ مِنَ الْهَلَاكِ الَّذِي هُوَ بِصَدَدِهِ, he is the one to really save you from that damnation, if you like, that you are ahead of, that's ahead of you, if you don't really take these flaws seriously. And then he talks about something else. So Al-Ghazali, took us on a very short journey here. That's what to do with our flaws, working with these mentors, true friends, enemies, mixing with people, very serious things. If we have time, I'm happy to receive questions or comments before we bring this to us. What time is it now? 2:02. Okay, thank you, Imam. Yeah, man. Any comments or questions? No comments on Zakariyya's story? No comments on Al-Ghazali's stuff? Come on, guys. It's always perplexing to try and interpret.
Also thinking with coming to know your own flaws,
Mm-hmm.
do you not also think that's just self-reflection as well? Like, but from the list of the mentor, true friends, enemies, and mixing with people, also just like self-reflection.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in terms of the spiritual path in Islam, one's self is one's first enemy.
Yeah.
So always lie to you. But if you have if you again, the fact that you pause and reflect is definitely a good thing. Absolutely. Yes, Ya Rahima.
From that point,
Uh-huh.
so if you reflected on yourself and then you think one thing that you're going to change by taking different actions or changing your behavior in a certain way, how do you know that you chose the right actions or
Mentor. That's why having a mentor is significant. These are serious stuff, wallahi. Yani. I think we are stuck. We live in a time, we've seen how many times Al-Ghazali in one single passage critiques his own time. He's actually one of the Salaf, like 5th century of Islam is the Salaf, according to one interpretation of the Islamic tradition. And yet he's critical of his own time and he thinks this is almost the end of time. We live literally 1,000 years after him. How much more should we say about our own time? So I think having a mentor today is literally a necessity if we are to make any use of education. For this education to be really useful, how many PhDs do we have? How many graduates do we have? So many. But why is it not really succeeding? Why are we not, better mannered? People are literally unwell. They don't know. A lot of you are really unwell metaphysically, unwell deep inside. Today, what is psychology. Psychology is a newly introduced discipline that lately understood there are diseases to the self. I need to work on these, right? In the religious traditions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and other, of course, faith, Buddhism and Hinduism, they understood this ages ago. That in as much as your body has diseases, yourself has diseases, and you need to take these seriously. And these are ways of handling this. Yeah. Yes, Siri.
Why wouldn't Zakariyya ask for a child?
Why wouldn't he ask for a child? Because he was so advanced in age, like he was literally 100 years.
Why wouldn't he ask him early?
I mean, you better ask him. Like, I mean, how would I know? Yeah. Maybe he was so he was so happy with his life. I mean, he thought, I mean, Allah would give, if it's good for me, Allah would give it to me. If not, I'm not going to ask for it. So, but that's a good question, Yelin. Thank you for asking this question. That also means that, taking us back to my earlier point, Zakariyya wasn't really asking for a child as such. Otherwise, he would have asked much earlier in his life when he needed a child, if you wish, when he really wanted to have a child. But yeah, maybe he was so busy. Maybe you don't know. Yes, yeah, Ahmad.
What do you think of things like psychiatrists who kind of act not really as mentors, but it's like temporary, short-term?
They definitely help. They definitely help. They definitely help. But the issue is they are quite limited as to how much they can offer. Much of the self is metaphysical things. If you take away the metaphysical things, how can you treat it? How can you attend to it? Right? As a psychiatrist. And I have an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in a faith tradition who comes to me and says, I'm handling this. How do I attend to it? If I don't have that metaphysical lens, how can I help? All I can say, maybe have some time for reflection, do some exercises. This can help temporarily, yes. People need religion. People need faith. Not just because it is true, but also because without it we are depressed.
I think it's also mental, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have faith, mentally you feel, it makes you feel good. You say, if something goes wrong, then you say, oh, maybe it's not meant to be.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think it's
absolutely.
To say, yeah.
Definitely. I mean, psychiatrists are important. I can't deny this. But again, given how faith has been somehow,
It calms you. You say, oh.
Yeah, sure. But faith has been somehow sidelined from the medical tradition today. So if I invoke Allah in a medical context, as a doctor, if you wish, as a medical doctor, I don't know how this gets treated today within the medical profession. But again, it can be a good stepping point, stepping stone for having a good comprehensive treatment. But these flaws of the self, how can you deal with them without having a faith tradition that you lean on? We've seen attempts. One that ends with indifference. Another one that ends with entitlement. And this sort of absolute ambition. And speaking of this as well, please let me know, man, what time is it by now? Yes, Eli.
If you're a humanist.
Humanist, I didn't say a humanist.
But does that technically mean you don't have faith or something?
Oh, wow. I mean, humanists have they come in different shapes and different forms. There are humanists that believe in God, but there are also humanists that don't believe in God. So they come from different traditions. But happy to.
Humanist?
Humanism was a movement that emerged, if I'm not mistaken, in the 15th century Europe. Was seen as literally the age before the Enlightenment age, or the age of Enlightenment. It's when people started to believe in more universal values. So there is definitely a positive side to humanism, but the negative side of it is it ended up somehow centralizing the human being as opposed to God, if you wish, and therefore you could say humans can develop their own values independent of God, and that's when you get into. That's why you have humanists who are still believers in God. It's the people that really believe in universal values and try to elevate humanity to. I mean, I definitely would sympathize with this dimension of it, but not that values are independent from God as such, in a way that centralizes the human being, if you wish. But much more can be said about humanism. I don't want to be superficial in my answer, but it was a movement. Check it up, Jan. It was a movement that came, I think, 15th century Europe, right before the Enlightenment age. You could ask, what is the Enlightenment age? Maybe I can do a class in philosophy, maybe. But yeah, it was a movement, but still, of course, still exists. You have today people who identify as humanists. Some of them are believers, others are not. So it's hard to speak of one specific view when it is diverse. What time is it here, man?
2:11.
Okay, so 2 more minutes.
I have a quick point
Yeah.
on the psychology generally. I think, like you're saying, it's very, very popular these days. I think it's one of the most popular courses that people take for university, and there's this really, really big interest in it, and just discovering sort of things more about yourself and these diseases that are happening all around us here, particularly, like you say, in the West. And obviously, maybe a big symptom is this lacking something behind your life kind of thing, something
Sure.
religious, something. So maybe this could be like future psychology where there's more sort of, because all the sort of Western kind of psychology, which is very much articles and stuff like that. There's a lot of there's no sort of nothing that focuses anything on religion or something like that, as far as I understand. So maybe something like that, which has some elements of incorporates some religion and psychology research and stuff, could be something.
Sure, definitely. I'm definitely positive about psychology. I think it's a good step that will end up with us really respecting faith to a greater degree. But because if you believe that there is a self, we can't see this self. The same thing can be applied to God. We don't see God, but we see signs of God everywhere. I see signs of myself everywhere. How can I not deny it? So it's a good stepping stone to restoring belief in God. I am convinced. So I'm very positive about it. But what I'm saying is, alone on its own, it can't do everything. The self is deeply metaphysical. Ibn Sina, the great Muslim philosopher, has a really interesting poem. Begins with his says هبطت إليك من المحل الأرفع. Says it descended upon you from a really higher place. He begins this poem by stating how it is really a noble thing that lies in the human. So you can't separate it from where it came from. ويسألونك عن الروح قل الروح من أمر ربي. It came from God. How can you separate this from God, the one who He sent it? You can't see it, but you can't live without it either. So, yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. We'll see you inshallah next week.